Hello and welcome to Sensei podcast. This is Manos Brilakis discussing with leaders in the field of CTO and complex PCI. Sensei means teacher or master in Japanese. The goal of the Sensei podcast is to help you learn and improve in CTO and complex PCI so that you can become the best that you can be and offer your patients the best possible results. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sensei Podcast. It is a great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Dr. Arnold Seto from the Long Beach VA in Los Angeles. He's the director of the Cath Lab at the Long Beach VA. He's a treasurer, executive committee member for SCAI, great operator, great friend. He can explain coronary physiology better than anyone else, and amazing interventionalist. And Arnold, thank you so much again for spending the time today with us.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
We always like to start from the beginning. How did you end up into cardiology?
Oh, this is a great opportunity to tell stories. I was a Harvard medical student and in the Harvard HST Health Sciences program, and actually wanted to save the world and become a primary care physician. So, in fact, I actually recall walking through a cath lab at the Brigham, I believe, and the operator, who I'm afraid I don't recall who it was, came out and said, I'm doing 6 of these today, and he was very excited about that, and he seemed very dedicated. But as just the observer from the outside, you're not involved in the case, and I was falling asleep, and I thought, I'm never going to do interventional cardiology. That sounds like something really boring. So I guess the long road is I ended up actually matching in primary care internal medicine and did 2 clinics a week, and then I realized that primary care is very general medicine, of course, but you're also you 1/3 of primary care is not just prevention, but you also deal with orthopedic injuries or depression and mental illness, and you're the gatekeeper for those things. And I didn't really feel adequately trained for that. I didn't feel like I didn't had enough of an impact there, and because I was an internal medicine resident, I decided to go into a subspecialty. But having taught renal pathophysiology in medical school, I figured I'd be a nephrologist. So I actually rotated and actually applied and did a rotation at UCSF to do nephrology. And at that moment, I knew I was good with my hands and doing procedures as a resident, and I wanted to do what's called interventional nephrology, meaning doing your own vascular access. At that time, they may have had only 3 programs in the country doing that. And the fellow there, he was at UCSF. He was a really nice guy. He said, Arnold, if you want to do interventions, why don't you just be a cardiologist? And I thought, maybe I should. And maybe I have a chance, thanks to my Harvard pedigree or whatever. And so I really appreciated him for redirecting me. I also realized that nephrology is not just physiology like we know of. Physiology and cardiology is fluid mechanics, it's movement, and clinical nephrology is not usually the physiology of electrons and electrolytes moving back and forth. Clinical nephrology is working with dialysis patients. Dialysis patients, unfortunately, for better or worse, they got to dialysis often because they weren't able to take care of themselves for diabetes or hypertension, and then the uremia itself makes them more challenging to work with because they're confused. So I realized that was a challenging field to be in, and the nephrologists always complained that they were being told what to do by the cardiologists. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe I should be a cardiologist. And so I applied in cardiology. I took a year to do critical care medicine at Stanford first, and then because my wife was finishing radiology residency at the same time, I met her in residency, and so I did. It might have seemed a diversion to do critical care medicine for 1 year before doing 3 years of cardiology, subsequently doing interventional cardiology. But I think as I look back, I realized how much of an impact that made on me, because in critical care medicine around that time, 2004, 2005, all of the central lines that we did, I did 3 swans a day. I did like 5 central lines, and everything was, by guideline, had to be done with ultrasound guidance. And so you realize that, and you say, hey, this is easy. I can stick a subclavian, I can stick a carotid, no problem, or stick a internal jugular. And then you go in, and then I started in cardiology fellowship, and we're doing femoral punctures with blind sticking, and you're like, how, what it gives? You're giving him powerful heparin, glycoprotein inhibitors at that time, and you're sticking blindly, and you're letting a fellow do it, multiple times, and then to come back with hematomas, retroperitoneal bleeds. And I thought, there has to be a better way. And I was familiar with that better way. I'm like, why don't we use ultrasound? So I mean, this is sort of the story of how I helped bring ultrasound to cardiology. Which is a very traditional field. They didn't feel like we needed it. My first cardiologist, he told me, oh, it's the easiest thing. Just stick, feel and stick, feel and stick. But I realized that there's a better way, and even early on in fellowship, I was able to start a study and then finish the study by the end of a 3-year fellowship. And thanks to some excellent collaborators like Mazen and Bufadel from Oklahoma, we did that the study of now known as FAUST, 1,000 patients randomized across 4 of our hospitals. You can only do this as a fellow. I ran around and consented personally 600 patients, and
My goodness.
and so, but it turned out to be positive, and it led to late breaking clinical trial at TCT, and I suppose that led me down this path of academic medicine and academic interventional cardiology. So that's sort of a nutshell of how we got here.
Well, this is amazing. To be honest, I know Mazen very well as well, but I never asked how this whole happened. But it's fascinating to hear that actually it was your intensive care fellowship that gave you the motivation and the idea, I guess, to do this.
Yeah, that was the inspiration to at least start it. But Mazen had the same idea, and I never met Mazen. I mean, he's in Oklahoma, but I looked up the literature for what people were doing for femoral access, and there was Mazen's up-to-date study of testing fluoroscopy versus manual palpation, and he did exactly the same thing, 1,000 patients, and then I cold called him and emailed him, cold called him, and I said, I'm thinking about doing this, and he said, yeah, I was thinking the next step would be to try ultrasound. And so instantly that collaboration developed. He was a recent graduate and I was still a fellow. And but I had the time to marshal the resources. I applied to the SiteRight company to borrow some ultrasounds, get the materials costs. So we actually did it with no budget. I mean, I think that's still one of the things I'm proud of, is that we had no funding for this. We had just sweat equity and some courtesy materials only from SiteRight, borrowed at the time. And we were able to, with the help of our attendings and all of our classmates, get this study done, which I think we're both proud of, has hopefully changed practice. Still slowly. I mean, still the uptake's not as good as we'd like, but I believe it's a generational issue that over time more people will use ultrasound because, as I've said, even then, the radiologists use it, the vascular surgeons use it. Why are we, as a cardiologist, the last one to use it? But no, I think that's been a wonderful collaboration, and he's been a great friend throughout both of our careers.
No, this is amazing, and especially as you said, I mean, I know what it is to consenting 600 people. I mean, that's some serious work. I mean, there's no question about that. This is insane. So clearly amazing work ethic. But again, phenomenal studies. You said it has changed practice. I mean, to be honest, I've been to many labs lately. I'm not seeing any more, even for radial, I'm not seeing any more puncture with manual palpation. Right? I'm not. Now, maybe I'm sure there are some still left, but I think it really made an impact. And most people now are using ultrasound.
That's great, and as Maz and I have talked about, no matter what we do, if we retire now or fall off the face of the earth, we can at least look back on that and say, hey, we did something good, something changed,
and many more to come. But but actually, it's not just Faust, because then you did the Roust as well, right? So it continued. So is that how do you get the idea for the Roust trial?
Yeah, I mean, interesting stories there. I mean, as we were finishing the Faust study, Mort Kern comes back from visiting Montreal and from Olivier Bertrand. And he says, we're gonna go 100% radial moving forward. And I'm like, whoa, let me finish the Faust study first. And we did. And then, after my interventional fellowship, I came back to the VA, and then and similar, conference attendance. I mean, I went to and saw a fellow with Zoran Lasic's group in New York, and they presented a small study, a pilot study of using radial for radial ultrasound. And I realized that this was a potential great collaboration. They had higher volume centers there, and so we were able to do a similar study, radial artery ultrasound, with them, and as well as my friend in Florida. So I think we were able to show. I mean, no one has complications from radial, so it's not going to be the same thing. But we could at least show that it was going to be useful for first pass success and reduction in time to access.
Perfect. Again, I mean, as you said, this is something that makes perfect sense, and these studies were the forefront. But it's not just the studies that you did. I think also the education. I know many of the SCAI meetings or the fellows courses where you present access. I think it's not that it used to be that boring topic. Hey, okay, you look at I mean, I think the way you present it also makes it more meaningful and easy for people to understand and to implement on their practices as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's part of spreading the word and almost like gospel, but it's spreading the data, but also spreading the education. And people learn by seeing, right? They do it themselves, and then they realize what they were missing, right? We were doing it blindly. We weren't seeing things. One of the most rewarding things was offline was someone who told me, hey, I didn't believe what you're doing in radial, but now I'm a convert. I do it all the time. And this is a fairly senior guy, and so I think that's very rewarding. And in terms of presenting it, I mean, once you see what you're doing with the radial artery, you see all the variations. Sometimes the radial is really small, sometimes it's calcified, sometimes it has that loop you can see, and then oftentimes it's very fibrous, and you push on it, and it literally runs away from you. So I think that people realize once they see what they're doing, they realize that seeing is better than feeling.
No, absolutely. I think you made a huge difference on this. And as you say, it makes sense, but there is a learning curve and it's a little steeper, I think, than most people realize. It's not just seeing it and sticking it. There's some angles to consider, some other things, but you're absolutely right. Once you get used to it, there's no way coming back. Actually, one of our fellows was telling me that they went to a lab that did actually told them you should get access without, and it's like they were terrified. How can you do that? So I think I think this is pretty much done, and if not yet, I think most people will convert eventually on this. But this is one major area where you've done a lot of work. But obviously, physiology is another area where you've really made a huge impact. How did that line of work and research and teaching come along?
Well, I think I'm just tagging along on Mort's 30 years of work in this area. He obviously is one of the forefathers of coronary physiology, having measured coronary flow with the original Doppler wire. But he learned and realized that the pressure-based measurements, FFR, were superior and more robust than his measurement. And I think it's actually a good lesson that he was able to transition. He's not stuck on his one technique, but rather he's able to realize that another person's technique is better, so I'm going to promote your other technique, and that's actually a good lesson for everyone. My personal contribution has been participation in the IFR trials, define flare, but also to identify the limitations of adenosine. It doesn't cause the when just 10 years ago we were saying it causes a stable and maximal hyperemia, but it turns out to do neither, because half the time it's unstable. And then in terms of maximal hyperemia, if it does it for only a few seconds in half the cases, and then you get this rebound effect. I mean, the body is, I think, fighting us, right? If you give any physiologic system a stress, then there's a natural physiologic response. It'll compensate. And then if you don't have enough of the agent, in this case IV adenosine, then you may be overcome by the physiologic response. And so we've moved on to using intracoronary adenosine because it's much faster, and we're excited to hear that Bill Fearon has also moved on mostly to IC, in clinical work at least, for IC adenosine. And I know you've done work on all sorts of things, of course, and I still recognize your work repeatedly on disengaging the guide for pressure measurements. So kudos to you.
No. I'm just trying to understand. But so Arnold, how so in the interventional part, and again, you've been now doing it for a long time, teaching people for a long time. What are the things that you found so far that you are learning? Are you still learning? Are you you think you've reached the plateau? How do you thinking about the things that you are doing in the cath lab today versus tomorrow and versus what you were doing yesterday?
That's a great question. You're hitting upon a midlife crisis. I suspect. I think we all get this around our age. I just celebrated a birthday yesterday and recognize I'm getting older. And then
Congratulations.
the trainees all get younger and younger. No, and I think it's I think inherently for any procedural specialty or operation, I mean, you want people who are very experienced, and by the time we get really experienced, we've seen complications, we know how to handle them, we're calm. You want, if you're a patient, you want that expert, the person who does that surgery only, and he's the expert in doing that. But what does it do to the surgeon who does that all the time? It means that they're so comfortable that they've seen it all, so it becomes less exciting. So for all of us as operators, it behooves us to really explore the other things that might be of interest. In your case, of course, it's CTOs and other challenging coronary physiology, coronary interventions. And I've tried to follow that, frankly. I mean, one of your sample questions was, what cases are you most proud of? Well, the CTO work that I'm doing, continues to both amaze the technicians and amaze me sometimes. I still remember my first reverse cart on my own. I'm like, wow, what Manos was saying and all the other folks, CTO folks, are saying, it actually works. It actually, you can get that wire across. And so, I think we all need challenges in our career, in our work. And boy, a CTO remains a challenge. I tell the staff now that if at any point if I'm ever 100% convinced that this will work out, then I'm not trying hard enough, because there's always a point in a CTO which I'm fearful of failure and embarrassing myself. But that also is the challenge. I mean, when the success, when you actually have the wire cross, is still a reward, and that's I think keeps me going. And of course, all the new things now, I'm going to start doing a little more peripheral work, and maybe some the renal denervation, the new techniques that we in interventional cardiology continue to have, which is amazing. Not all of us can do structural, not all of us can do all these other things, but there's always something that we can do to continue challenging ourselves. And some people find it in other things, research or administrative challenges. But on the technical side, we're still, people like you are still advancing the field, and that helps all of us as we're following along, because we're trying new things, and things that we thought we were unfixable are now fixable.
Well, I still need a lot of work to catch up on the physiology part, but I'll be calling you for advice. But I'm very impressed you were able to do the retrograde, one of those things that creates a lot of stress. And although now the steps are well described, I think it's much more standardized than they were 10 years ago. It's still a stressful experience. So that also says that you have some good tolerance of discomfort. So for those cases, how are you feeling? Are you get nervous? Do you get anxious? Are you calm? How are those cases feeling to you?
If I know, if I'm going through a protocol such as the ones that you set up, then I know what the next steps are. I know what my capabilities are. I know what my available tools are. Then it's fairly straightforward. You just this fails, this goes to the next step. It's frustrating when the lab I'm in doesn't have everything that I have. I jokingly asked at my private lab, "Oh, do you have an OPN balloon? No. Do you have this? Do you have a this wire? No." So that's a little frustrating. It's also frustrating when you're concerned about scrutiny, when things don't go wrong, don't go right. I mean, if there is a complication, if you're fearful that you'll be attacked, either personally or professionally, if you're not in an environment that's supportive, then that's a challenge as well, because we'll all have complications. And I've been very fortunate to be in an environment, certainly when Dr. Curran was supervising, that he would always be very supportive and understanding that things happen, and we're trying our best, and we're also we learn how to recover. But I think certain institutions sometimes are more conservative than others and less tolerant of risk. But I think as interventional cardiologists, we inherently and professionally know how to deal with risk. We accept this risk and realize that we're trying to do our best. And so we accept the risk, but we need to convince sometimes our colleagues or our institutions that risk is part of the work we do, and inherent to that is covering everything, doing everything, preparing for every possibility. But sometimes things still don't work out.
No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right that, complex cases, CTOs and other complex cases, I mean, cannot really happen unless you're in such an environment. Because if, someone is looking for a complication, I mean, yes, there will definitely be complications in the best programs in the world. And as you said, you plan for it, but it's part of the equation. And obviously working with Dr. Kern is unbelievable. And not everyone has the same, leadership that can help with the environment. But I think most places who do at a high level, there is general tolerance and understanding that these are complex cases with high complication risk. But even with that range, sometimes it takes a personal toll. So how do you recover when you have a complication, things don't work out? Is that easy? Is that tough on you? What is your process?
Oh, yeah, you're getting personal now. I go home and it helps to talk it over with Dr. Curran and then my wife. We, as part of our safety culture that I've helped develop, I mean, we do a debrief, and so I'm obviously preparing for that debrief during the procedure or even after the procedure and talking it out with my staff, because as tough as we take it, the staff may also think that something went wrong or something they missed, and somehow they're responsible. So it's very helpful to talk things out in a debriefing, sharing cases as we do. In a protected environment within the VA or with our colleagues, the Twitter, I share with some of my former fellows cases over WhatsApp, and then we compare notes. So that's helpful. Having your own community to support you is very important. I can only imagine in certain environments, have very competitive environments, private practice environments where they're looking for a way to get you. That would be that I feel like I've been there, and if someone wants to get at you, then that just multiplies the stress of the complication, and it also then potentially multiplies the stress before the complication, and maybe you make more mistakes. So I just think that we all need to find environments and set up environments that are supportive of each other, and then also less cutthroat. So the VA is certainly one of those environments, in my opinion, but certain other places are not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Could not agree more. And the environment is critical. But still, it can have, it can be even in the best environment, still this can be tough. And I guess you are lucky your wife is a physician, so you can go and discuss this in more detail. Do you actually bring films and show angiograms at home and show them, or you don't do that?
No, no, no. She's a radiologist. She could probably handle it, but she's telling me more about her breast cancer cases than I'm telling her about interventional cardiology. I just tell her I had a bad day. But no, just the general support and of family and friends is helpful.
And Arnold, what have you found the most difficult thing to learn in interventional cardiology so far?
Most difficult thing to learn, I think CTOs are still the most difficult things to learn because it takes so much experience and so much time. And I'm fortunate to be in an environment where I have that time to try new things and order equipment that I can't get elsewhere. So, I think that has kept me excited about the field, certainly of coronary interventions. The hardest things, I mean, I think these are technical challenges, right? We learn how to overcome them. I think the more challenging things are applying to medicine in general, right? We're all in a more business or corporatized environment, and sometimes have less autonomy than we used to. As physicians, we used to have a very honored place in the hierarchy of both our institutions and maybe in society. We may still have that in society, but in the corporate ladder, then I believe that we are losing that power and respect. And I think that's the challenge we all have, of burnout from loss of autonomy. And I believe that I've personally turned down jobs now that would give me less autonomy than the VA does. That would have otherwise paid me much more money, because I would have lost autonomy. And I'm like, and I literally asked myself the question, is my freedom worth $150,000 a year? And I decided that yes, it is. The freedom to do outside work, do interesting things, consulting, startup companies. I mean, I'm working with all these things just to keep things interesting, because I believe that variety is important to keeping my career lively. And I think I can learn a lot from these other things.
No, absolutely. And I completely agree with you that being satisfied with your work goes far more beyond the reimbursement. It's the whole situation. It's freedom, it is understanding, also the ability to do the right thing. And I must say, I've been at the VA for many years, and the one great thing about the VA that I think is superb than most of the systems is, the patient comes first. I mean, if there's equipment needed, you have much less red tape to go through than other places to get what is actually needed for the patient. So that's
Right.
a great way to do it.
Right, right. I ask for a wire or catheter. I don't need to go. I have a clinical products review committee. But if I say that yes, it's more expensive, but it's going to be better for the patient or safer for the patient, especially, then that's great. If I do it at even a university hospital, they would look at it and say, well, we're going to make more money off of this, and they say no, then we can't get it. So I can hardly imagine how much more difficult that would be.
Perfect. And then in terms of the process, obviously you're doing very complex cases. You have the advantage of you're very experienced already. When you said so, that helps also. But any tips and tricks for other people who are starting their program based on what you've seen in your experience in your hospital?
Well, I'm gonna downgrade my experience because I don't do as much as you do, certainly, and many other CTO operators. I also work at a hospital that doesn't have cardiac surgery, so you feel a little more concerned when I'm certainly not doing epicardial retrogrades. I feel comfortable approaching antegrade and some retrogrades. But in terms of how to get experience, you really do have to learn from others, either at the courses or in my case, I had Dave Daniels come by back when Abbott and Asahi were sponsoring a lot of coaching sessions. I literally had him come by my lab at the UCI, and he would train me. I lined up the cases. We did several days of CTO proctoring, but really it's teaching there, and that's really hard to come by. You can't replace that hands-on teaching even with a live course or even other interventions. So I think we need more of that. The ideal situation is if you have two operators who can you can bounce ideas off of, and Mort's not doing any CTOs, so I need to expand my network, and ping you more often along with other CTO operators to say, hey, what do you think about this case? Is this going to work? But admittedly, I often give it a try, and then a college try, and then sometimes refer out if I think it's too risky for me.
Perfect. No, and again, this is a process, and I think for everyone, it's this back and forth goes all the time at all levels. I mean, I myself text a lot of people. People text me for questions and moving forward. Now, you do have a lot of cases and a lot of radiation, especially if you're doing now the more complex CTO. So how concerned are you? I know you are using now the Protego, if I'm not mistaken, right? So how did that go, and how are you feeling protected on the radiation front?
Yeah, I'm inherently initially a skeptic on many things, and it seemed a little unwieldy. But in my cases, generally, for most interventions or diagnostics, certainly, I'm pretty fast. But but Protego really works. I mean, we see our badges afterwards. It's like 0.1, 0.2 even after a long case, and nothing beats it for a CTO intervention, which will be long. CTO intervention in an obese patient, that's it's it's going to be bad. But I think it's a game changer, because for the first time I've been telling my staff, what, I need to see a little better. So for a routine case, I'm going to turn up the radiation, and so that's a game changer, and very very much has helped our interventions. But for CTOs, especially when you're on the fluoro, even at low fluoro, you're still exposing yourself a lot, and that I think we all feel more comfortable when during a 3-hour case. We're no longer coming out sweaty with the lead. We're coming over, and we don't feel as exhausted. The staff love it, and it takes them only 5 more minutes to set up, possibly as little as 3. And I think it's a great investment in time. But I think it's an iteration of what you described in your papers earlier. That the next biggest iteration was the new machines, the Philips machines, and even the new Siemens. But the Philips lower clarity years ago reduced our radiation by to 1/3 of what it was easily. And even now, as I go visit several private hospitals, I mean, I did a standard intervention yesterday. It took me 5 gray on an older Siemens machine, and my university hospital still has a 13-year-old Philips and with biplane and giving off 3 to 5 gray for routine cases. So I think that those really need to come out, and we need to upgrade most machines. So even if you're not going lead free or going for zero radiation using a Protego or Rampart, you need to at least upgrade to these modern machines. And that's where hospitals really need to step up and pay the $1 million, pay $1.5 million to upgrade each of those machines, because it's really a health hazard for us. And SCAI advocacy, we're trying to advocate for this, and Dr. Hermiller has made it his cause célèbre this year is workplace wellness. And we need to advocate for ourselves and say this is no longer acceptable because we have options. And at the very least, you need to get us a new X-ray machine, if not the Protego or Rampart.
Yeah, no, I'm so thrilled that, I mean, that's good for the patient too, and for the operator as well. Everyone benefits from this. Now, you don't wear the lead with the Protego, right? You're lead free.
Yeah.
Were you having any back issues before, or it was just the radiation concern? Because some people do it because they cannot wear the lead anymore.
Yeah, I wasn't having back pain myself. I mean, I'm still a runner, but I wasn't stretching as much. So I started getting some neck pains, maybe as everyone else was complaining about there, or as I got older. But I'm more reassured now that I won't develop it as long as I keep using the Protego. So it's going to extend all of our careers. One of our former fellows was one of the people who initiated that Mort Curran email list discussion on this topic. And after a mere 10 years out of fellowship, he already had back pain and and numbness of his arms and weakness. So he didn't think he had to hang it up that soon, but continued lead wearing is not good for that. And then all the stories came out that people, like Kenny Rosenfield, among others, and already have had multiple surgeries. We don't talk about this enough, and I was surprised. I've never heard these things, but to have these discussions on email and now in conferences, really, hopefully, will generate the energy for us to advocate for ourselves, because frankly, our employers aren't going to really care if 30 years, 20 years down the line, they lose our abilities. They can rehire us, just like an insurance company doesn't care really if 20 years from now they prevent something. We need to advocate for the prevention and health that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us actually to SCAI, which I know you've been a big part of, and you've had a lot of impact both in the L program and then in the several documents that you've created. You've been the treasurer for a while in the exec committee, so it really made a huge role. The fellows course, a lot of education. And I know actually many people, I think there are many more people involved these days, but still the majority of interventionalists, I don't think they are. So it's always interesting to hear the people who've been more involved, but how they've impacted their practice and their career.
Yeah, I mean, for me, SCAI is my professional society, and really my way of impacting our field, both in research, but also in education, but also in policy outside of my four walls. I mean, each of us work in four walls of an institution, and anything we do never leaves that wall outside of these types of venues and these our professional societies. And so it's exciting to me to work with SCAI, because I think I can help make a difference and help make the society stronger in perpetuity, right? Along with this amazing team of staff members like our CEO and all of our volunteer physicians, executive. I mean, the amount of involvement and dedication that goes into SCAI really makes it a team effort, and that's what will make it successful. I'm always trying to advocate for more participation, and and that's how we're going to demonstrate value for our members. Otherwise, especially with a journal that's now open access, we have to demonstrate that we're working on behalf of our members, and then also enabling abilities to participate. And so the days of when SCAI might have been a small closed off group are now long gone. We have formal procedures and policies on who can be an officer and for how long. And I think that turnover is important. So one day I'll turn over as well, and we'll find another role within SCAI or elsewhere. But I think that we have to simultaneously allow more people to participate while still preserving the expertise that comes with that participation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, as you said, that it's been the very open society. It's everyone is welcome, and there's work for everyone who is interested. So I can always encourage people as well to join and participate. Now, coming back to you, I know that you're a big runner, done some great runs together, and continuing. Is that how you keep in good shape? What is your secret for the work, the writing, and everything else that you do? How do you keep in good shape to get all these things done?
Well, I still run 4 miles a day. I used to run in college and afterwards. I ran several Boston marathons, and actually almost 10 of them now. It's
Wow.
harder as we get older, as you well know, but I was still gonna remember the run I had with you last year in 105-degree weather in Austin, and how brave you were to go out there.
I was impressed. I was impressed
I was surprised that you
with
wanted to
you.
go back and do it again. So we'll do that again next year at CVI. No, running's always been a part of my life. Going back to when I was growing up, I was always the smallest kid, the last person picked on the basketball team because I was shorter, because I had skipped a grade. But running was the one thing you can do no matter how small you are, and that kept with me. And so it's also the best exercise you can continue after school, because you don't need equipment, you don't need a team necessarily. And that makes it a little more isolating, you might argue, but it also enables you to bring it anywhere you want. So you're flying somewhere for a conference or touring a capital of some state that you've never been. The best way of seeing a city is just putting on the shorts and the shoes, and running around, taking a look around. So I think it's part of my life. Probably always will be, and knock on wood, haven't had enough injuries to prevent me from running. So, but it also has put me in touch with this larger community of runners, but many of whom are my friends, some of whom are in interventional cardiology. So at these conferences, we started the SCAI morning run, and thank you for participating in that. And there's a whole crew of people who try to stay in shape and run before conferences.
Yeah, no, this was fun. Really, really enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm looking excited to the run in Montreal. I guess is it Montreal next year, so that will be another amazing run.
Yeah, it'll be Washington next year, and then Montreal
Washington, sorry, yeah.
then Montreal the following year. So we're looking forward to that. And I was just hearing from Mort that SCAI's been to Montreal a long time ago, possibly 15, 20 years ago. So I'm going to try to dig that up, because no one currently can remember when that happened. But Montreal is a beautiful city. Not as good as Long Beach, but Long Beach is
well,
still
you'll
nice
settle
weather.
for second.
Yeah.
For second best, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what else? I know you always, are very calm, very collected, keeping calm. How do you do that? Do you meditate? Do you do any specific technique, or it comes natural?
I think it's part of my nature to come across as calm, and that's helpful in the lab, because if you're calm, your staff are calm, right? If you're yelling and screaming, then they get anxious and they will miss something. I'm not sure it's conscious on my part. I think it's partly from experience. As an intensive care unit fellow and a longtime cardiologist, I've seen a lot of people crash and burn, and so I can generally remain calm in those situations. The key, and I think you may have it better than I do, is to have that protocol or algorithm in mind of what you should do. Sometimes I feel like I'm so calm that I don't get everyone else's stress levels activated enough to recognize that there's a mistake, there's something going on. I may calmly say, there's a dissection there, or a perforation, and under respond. So my problem is actually under responding, which is unusual perhaps. But I believe with calm and an algorithmic approach that you promulgate, I think that's the best combination. I mean, I still recall somebody saying Antonio Colombo in a live case, right? He had a perforation, and he converted it, and he just calmly said, "Okay, we're no longer talking about this. We're going to be now talking about a coronary, delivering of a covered stent in a live case." So he just calmly says, "This is what we're going to do," and I think that just comes with experience and comfort, right? Um, a similar thing. Even yesterday, I was doing a more complicated case, but I was just talking it out with the text and saying, "This is what we're going to do next. This is what we're going to do next. This is what I need next," which makes it more efficient because they can ask for things. But just by talking things out, they knew what was going on. They felt more comfortable with the plan. They realized what was next. So I think if we talk it out and feel, we feel more comfortable and our staff feel more comfortable, then it makes for a more successful procedure. I don't think it's necessarily conscious on my part, but I think it is, at least my staff give me good feedback that this is very helpful to them.
No, absolutely. Completely agree that you give the tone for the team and you keep it calm. Everyone benefits, including the patient. Now, do you have any favorite books or movies?
I probably haven't read too much since college. I must admit, but I read the New York Times every day. I read some business magazines. So I'm very much a nonfiction and current events type of guy. So I'm more to the politics side than fiction. But movies wise, I mean, I'm still looking back on movies 20, 30 years ago. We watched Independence Day with my kids, and we're like, wow, that's really 30 years old. But I think, from a drama perspective, I still like Shawshank Redemption, which is very moving and shows the strength of human character. So I think that's one of the better ones.
Wonderful. And then, how many hours do you sleep a day?
It varies, but I mean, the other benefit of the VA is that I'm actually don't even have call. I mean, I don't have interventional call, STEMI call. So I take some at the private hospital I work for, but I sleep anywhere from 6 to 7 hours a day, which is very helpful. Sometimes if I have imbibed too much, then I sleep less due to sleep dysfunction from alcohol. But that's I recognize that can be a problem. So, but no, I mean, typically I sleep 6 7 hours a day, wake up 5 6 a.m., go running. It's not as early as you, Manos, but
No, I think it's earlier actually.
really.
But this is perfect. And then in terms of the things that that going on and that you've done so many things, which are the ones that you're the most proud of?
Well, I think thank you for asking. I mean, we all want to make our lives feel like we made a difference in this world, made it a little better. And so I feel like, thanks to these excellent collaborations, we made a difference with teaching people ultrasound and cardiology, both in the femoral and radial approach. Made a slightly smaller difference in the physiology space to recognize that IV adenosine is not the end all be all. And then, most recently, we've been teaching how this StatSeal patch is actually is different from all your other patches and can actually help save you an hour from radial compression and maybe send people home an hour. So it's these little things of changing practice, right? Changing what people do and maybe making things a little better, right? That's what I'm proud of. I mean, obviously, I'm proud of my kids, my family, and frankly, I'm proud of the relationships I have, especially with my wife. Still married after almost 20 years. So
Congratulations.
I'm proud of all these things. But I think, looking back from a career standpoint, those practice changing research interventions are what matter. And I'm also proud that all of those were really unfunded, and that's just unique because we have the opportunity to do clinical research on patients that we work on, and with collaborations we can have enough patients to do a clinically relevant study. And some of the best studies I think are still these practical things that we could change. And that's unfortunately those aren't necessarily what's recognized by universities who want to bring in the research dollars and so on. And so I literally was talking with a university and I said, look, if you want an NIH sponsored researcher, most interventional cardiologists aren't doing that because what we do tends to be more practical or industry focused. So when they ask me, well, how do we increase the amount of research that people do? then you have to decide what are you looking for. Are you looking for those research dollars? Are you looking for practical changes? Research that actually changes medicine, or are you looking for research that creates the next new device, which is more industry related? So I think research can mean all sorts of things, but I think research is where we make our mark in our field, and I would encourage everyone to follow their research interests.
Perfect. No, I completely agree. And tell us a little bit about the StatSeal. I know that you've done some work on these patches for actually what works on femorals too, but tell us a little bit more about how you got involved into this and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, so I was involved with it by my colleague in University of Miami, who was working with this company, BioLab, who make the StatSeal, and they BioLife, sorry. And I recognized early on, they gave me a few samples, like anyone, and I said, look, this is a little different. It's actually, it sticks. It creates this seal that is not just absorbing the blood, and it actually sticks there. And I still like showing the video they have online, which is this apple. They apply the D-stat, they put the kaolin, and they put the StatSeal, and only the StatSeal can enable them to lift off the apple. And I thought, wow, this is impressive stuff. And after using it several times, I realized that this could be something different. And then we designed this trial, actually two trials, Stat1 and Stat2, to test it. And the first one was 200 patients. We showed, it is improving the time to access, but we compared it against the 2-hour standard comparator. And obviously, you can set up a study like that to make it always positive, but it also had a few more hematomas. So with any research, you should iterate your protocol, change it to make it better. So we changed it. We made it 1 hour. We then compared it directly with a 1 hour comparator of 1 hour with TR band alone. And that was, we were able to show that it was more successful in allowing TR band deflation after 1 hour than the TR band alone. And it's rare to be able to first demonstrate that, again, with this time with the help of collaborations with Jordan Saferstein, who was also working on the StatSeal. But then it's also rare to have it immediately confirmed in a much larger study from Britain, where they showed in 2,000 patients instead of 400 that that the StatSeal reduced time to access. Reduced time of compression to 1 hour consistently, compared with the TR band alone, where half the time it's going up to 2 hours instead of 1 hour. So I think people should try it, and I'm glad that we were able to narrow down the protocol to get it just right. I'm pretty sure we have it just right. But then you're learning all these other things that, well, it mainly works. It works best with the TR band, because the TR band has this rigid plastic plate. And with the TR band shortage last year and the supply chain issues, people tried other bands and it didn't work as well, because other bands don't distribute the pressure quite as well. So we're constantly learning and iterating. But I would encourage everyone to try it, because it is different from your other patches that we've been familiar with for 20 years and frankly don't work as well. This is something that seems different. And I have no conflicts of interest, no investments in StatSeal, but I think it really can make a difference.
No, and I love how you made the progress. How you started with the femoral, you went to radial, now you're doing the patch. So literally, I know you've done a lot of work on the access teaching, big access, and the SCAI document on this. So you literally have defined the field in various different aspects. And I think now I think on the regular access we have less bleeding, but the big side, impellers and things like that, we still have room to go there. So definitely every incremental step can help a long way.
Yeah. And I mean, the latest research is on femoral ultrasound is solely on large bore access, TAVRs and so on, which, the evidence is still equivocal, but it really depends on who's studying it and how. So
Arnold, what is next? I know you've done amazing work and a lot of things, but what is the thing that excites you? What is the next thing for you?
Oh man, you're asking the midlife crisis question to me. I should be asking it of you. No, honestly, I am actively looking at what that might be, and it might be a different institution, different opportunities. But then you go back to what you're familiar with, what you're good at, and you realize you don't need that much more money. You don't necessarily want more authority, power, because that's more headache. And so it's very, shall we say, easy and comfortable to stay and keep doing what you're doing. as long as you still keep it spiced up with research or teaching. And so I'm excited about some new research and new teaching opportunities. I'm considering some other positions. I think maybe this goes back to you, Manos. I mean, I think um, we see so many important partnerships between you and Subash at Dallas VA and myself and Mort, and those are so wonderful. And you always need to have a partner you can bounce ideas off of and grow from. And obviously Mort is easing into semi-retirement, and I've often asked myself, where do I go next, or what do I do next? And I think you guys have a good an interesting model to consider, because you guys grew and made amazing progress at the Dallas VA, and it's never been the same since you guys have left. So I'm going to toss that question back at you and think, how have you navigated career transitions and change? Because change is, we have to acknowledge change is going to be constant in our lives. We all have career transitions, and some people have to transition out. Some people are midlife. So, what do you think?
Well, I have the perfect solution. You should come join us in Minneapolis. So
You've offered several
I know
times, so thank you.
I've been harassing you on this for a while, but jokes apart, I think we're all struggling with this. What is the next step? And you're absolutely right that, as you said earlier on, actually, the environment is huge. And if you're in a place where you feel safe and you feel that you're respected, you feel that people are caring for the mission, caring for the patient, doing a good job, I think that makes a huge difference versus an environment that is competitive or antagonistic or not collegial. I think that could really, money cannot compensate for going to an environment that is not conducive to good research. So I'm completely with you. It's finding an environment that you feel comfortable with, and having a partner or partners who are on the same page and you have a connection. I mean, that's huge. Of course, that you never know. It was random. Sebastian and I came there randomly at the same time, and things happened out. But I think in general, I think I have no doubt there will be something amazing that we'll be discussing, hopefully in the next Sensei in 10 years for the next chapter. But I'm sure it's going to be something amazing.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I'm less optimistic, except I'll probably hear it from you first. Thank you, though.
So Arnold, again, that was an amazing overview and very inspiring for everyone listening. If you had to give some advice to people who are finishing their fellowship or early in their careers about how to succeed in interventional cardiology, what would you advise them?
Find a good mentor. I mean, obviously, I've very much benefited, both from Mort's guidance and research, but his life advice, but also his introductions within SCAI. I mean, I'm involved heavily with SCAI and became Elm in part because of his recommendations. So having a good mentorship is really important, which is incredibly hard to find because it requires those of us now, I mean, to be good mentors and offer that in a time when, that's not necessarily encouraged or rewarded in other fields. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And how do you identify them? That also means sticking with the mentors you have, right? If you have a good mentor and you try to continue with them as long as possible. I'm actively holding on to Mort until we had to drag him out. So no, I think it really it means finding your community, right? I mean, a mentor is definitely the biggest part of it. I think, though, like you say, it's a larger community out there. I have now, a community of friends at SCAI through the ELM program, especially, but also yourself. I mean, my colleagues that we are so familiar with each other, having seen each other several times a year at conferences, that we can catch up very quickly. And so I think finding your community is the most important, of which part of it is finding a mentor. And SCAI can be that
Perfect.
community. So SCAI is your source.
No, I love it. And you're absolutely right. And obviously, they're not, I mean, I think obviously more Karen is unique. I mean, there's very few people at this level and amazing grace and understanding. But there are many good mentors out there, as you said. And I think it is a process, but pays off in the long run.
Yeah. And the SCAI mentorship program is ramping up. So, sign up and find a mentor through SCAI.
It's perfect. Well, again, Arnold, thank you so much. It's been amazing learning about your journey. Thanks so much for sharing with the audience. And again, very excited for our next run.
All right, very good. Look forward to it. Thank you, Manos.
Thank you for listening to the Sensei podcast.